Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here at T Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you on this Wednesday. It's Sunday, half the week's over. So, got a lot of fun stuff to talk about, of course, including a new poll on Donald Trump after his comments against four women of color. So, did that help with Republicans or not? We'll talk about that. Then we have Eric Trump saying something stupid, as usual. Then we have Brian Kilmeade defending President Trump as well. Then we have Trump's tax law. So there was something in there that was supposed to help people be able to file their taxes for free. Now, ProPublica has been doing some great reporting on this, and we're going to talk about how TurboTax is going after the poor in order to make more money. So now that's an important investigation, a really, really good article that I want to share with you. And so I want to break it down, and I want to tell you exactly how they've been targeting the poor, the elderly, the disabled, in order to make more money. So that's fun / disastrous. And then we have Cardi B feeling the burn. Awesome. And then, of course, our last story, Donald Trump's nuclear regulatory agency wants to deregulate nuclear. Great. So, wonderful. Okay, so that's some of the stories that we have today. I also have a little housekeeping, just to let you guys know. I will be at the Revolution Rally in Detroit, July 30th, Fox Theater. I will be there. I will have my camera, and if I see any of you guys, and maybe I'll, I can interview you. So, we'll have a conversation, come up and say hi if you guys are going, and then we're going to do what the Revolution Rally does, listen to some of the speakers. It's going to be really fantastic. So, and that is July 30th, before the debates. Should be really, really interesting. I'll be there on both July 30th and July 31st. At the Fox Theater. So did I say Ford Theater or Fox Theater? It's at the Fox Theater. So that is going to be quite a bit of fun. Join me there, since, like I said, I will be there. Okay. Anyway, there's that. There's also what I was talking about earlier. There was that video of David Pakman. He kind of broke down how the YouTube algorithm has changed. So now today, or I should say yesterday, we got hit with massive demonetization. So 4 out of our 6 videos that I put up yesterday, so 4 out of 6 segments, demonetized. I will make nothing off advertisements. Now, that would be fine. That would be cool. Oh, sorry. Monitor showing the screen. That would be fine. That would be cool if we had enough support on Patreon to support the channel without having to rely on advertisers. Right now, we rely too heavily on YouTube advertisements, which means we don't get to do as many controversial stories as I would really like. I'd like to dive into more, things like related to Iran more than I normally do. Terrorism and obvious racism and stuff. So I'm not able to do that quite as much because demonetization, right? So YouTube will find something that is not advertiser friendly in your video and boom, gone, demonetized. So you don't make anything from it. So now the problem with that, of course, is that it is actually work to try to put together these stories. And so it sucks that, we're not able to actually, when this happens, and I'm not the only channel that's happened to, it happens to Humanist Report all the time, happens to, Jimmy Dore's channel, it happens to, just so many other channels. Now, the thing about those channels is they actually do have a lot of support from their viewers. Now, that's great. I think that's definitely the way to go, crowdfunded model. Problem is, we are not there. We have about 380 patrons. God bless you all. You're amazing. Thank you so much. But that's not a lot. So it's not a lot of patrons. Things are expensive. And so I'm asking you guys, if you can, if you're able to, if you're not, don't worry about it. Can consider becoming a patron. So again, I wouldn't be making this pitch if it wasn't important, if we weren't actually facing a real issue with demonetization, because it's happening. Not only that, but of course our recommended, we're getting in the less in the recommended feed. Now you have YouTube that is pushing viewers to corporate media. So instead of getting, for example, recommended videos after watching this one, for example, you might get redirected towards Fox and CNN. I know, right? It's crazy. So instead of places like Secular Talk, the Young Turks, or anything like that, you get directed towards these corporate media channels. That is their algorithm change. That is on purpose. So they're trying to direct more eyeballs towards corporate media instead of independent media. And that, of course, has the problem of crushing independent media. As a member of independent media, I don't want to be crushed. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to either, because the more independent channels disappear, the more strength that CNN, MSNBC, and corporate media have on YouTube and therefore on public opinion. They are taking new media and they are trying to do the same thing and turn it into old media. And so that's the big problem here. And for us, a lot of people get confused and they think, well, you've got TYT in the name. Don't you get money from TYT? No, we pay into TYT. As part of our network partnership with the Young Turks, we get certain things in return, advertising, etc. But we pay into the network. So there is actually, and I can't, because of our contract, I can't actually tell you how much we actually pay in from our YouTube ad revenue into the Young Turks, but it's not an insignificant amount. So that revenue, of course, could potentially go to us, but that would involve leaving the network. I don't really want to do that because I think the benefits outweigh the costs. But at the same time, we are missing that revenue. That does kind of hurt, and with demonetization and less eyeballs getting towards our channel, it does kind of hurt. So that's why, of course, I continue to make the pitch. Please help us on Patreon. It's completely separate. None of that money goes to TYT. None of that money goes to YouTube. All that money goes to us. And so that's like the best way to help our channel and other independent media sources. And remember, only if you can. If you can't, please do not donate. So if this is, if you're struggling to pay the bills, which I know a lot of us are, don't do it. Like, we'll be okay without, we don't want you to, I do not want you to spend money that you could spend on food, or paying a bill on us. That would be stupid. We're not asking for that. But if you, get coffee every morning, you go out and you get a coffee or something, like $5, whatever, just throw that towards us a month. That helps out. So, again, I hate making this pitch. I hate doing this. I hate asking you guys because you've already given so much and you've given enough. And I'm sure you guys are out there helping other channels, Secular Talk, Ron Placone, great channels, Humanist Report, David Dole. All these wonderful progressives that are bringing you the news and commentary, and they're, they need your support too. And so I hate asking because I know you guys are out there support. Hell, I support Ron Placone. I support Secular Talk on Patreon. So, I'm out there supporting some of these channels too, because we really do need to start sticking together and working together and supporting each other and making sure that all of these independent voices continue to be on the air. Because without being able to support each other and having a sort of network of progressives that make sure to cover each other's backs and to be there for each other, we don't have anything. Because while the conservatives, we outnumber conservatives, they do stick together. And so that's something that we could ironically definitely learn from them, is how they do come back and support each other. And then, of course, a lot of these conservative channels do have a lot of backing from billionaires. To be fair, Koch brothers, etc. Nonetheless, they tend to be a little bit more cohesive. But anyway, so that's again, I didn't mean to go on such a long rant about this, but that right now is the state of YouTube. I am afraid, because looking at all this, that YouTube is saying, look, and some of it makes sense, that they are moving away from an ad-supported model, because right now they don't like the people like, for example, the conspiracy theorists, the Alex Jones people, etc. Advertisers scream and run. I get that. I don't agree with deplatforming. I don't agree with that completely demonetizing all channels. But you do need to put a check on, conspiracies that hurt people like Sandy Hook, etc., right? And clamp down on that. You shouldn't be making money off of that. Because you're putting real people in jeopardy and danger. I can understand that, and I can understand how they're like, well, look, man, we have, all these channels. We got some conspiracy channels. I get it. Maybe we should steer people away from that content. But as usual, a lot of innocent channels who don't do conspiracy stuff or actually go back and debunk all this conspiracy stuff, they're getting demonetized. We're getting caught up. It's this normal YouTube overreaction. And so we go through that every few months where there's an overreaction. There's and it crushes our channel. It hurts us. And so we got to continue to say, to ask you guys to continue your support, to really help us out, because it's right now it's a roller coaster, what we have for revenue, and what I want to do is we need some stability, and that's what Patreon, that's what other signing up to support channels, that's what that does. It gives stability as much as you can in news and politics. And again, this is not very, very stable. You even look at other independent outlets like BuzzFeed, etc. And well, maybe BuzzFeed's not a good example. But there are a lot of layoffs when it comes to independent, news outlets that aren't just YouTube centric. So it's very volatile. And it doesn't help that YouTube's trying to turn new media into old media. And it's ironic because the same reasons that, people left old media to come to new media are now coming to new media. And so it's disastrous. But anyway, okay, that's enough about that. I'm sorry. We got news to get to. All right. So we'll start out with a new poll out with the Republicans. How do they feel about the attacks from the squad? Hold. There we go. Okay. Now, following the racist tweet storm against 4 U.S. Congresswomen, Trump's approval ratings changed. Now, did they go up? Did they go down? Were people very, very angry about these attacks? I mean, then again, he did say that these 4 women who are American citizens should go back to their crime-infested countries and go fix that if they don't like America. If they don't like what's going on in the country. So now you would think that Republicans would be like, hey, wait a minute. No, these people are American citizens. We don't agree with them, but they're American citizens, and maybe that is kind of racist. No, what happened, of course, is that his approval rating among Republicans actually went up. Now, this is according to a new Reuters Ipsos survey conducted on Monday and Tuesday. Now, Trump told these lawmakers, again, that they should go back and fix their totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came. And after he did that, his net approval rating among Republicans rose by 5 points to 72%. 72%. So telling these women of color to get out of America made Republicans like him even more. It's almost as if the racism is not a bug, it is a feature. And yes, even the U.S. government guidelines consider telling someone to go back to their own country, that is considered discrimination. So there's no doubt that that is racist. It has a racist history. So now the good news is while there are, of course, more racist Republicans, everyone else seems to be turned off by this. In fact, among independents, about 3 out of 10 say that they now approve of President Trump. So that's about 30% of independent voters. And that actually went down since last week when they last asked this question. His net approval, the percentage who approve minus the percentage who disapprove, dropped by 2 points among Democrats in the polls, which I'm surprised it was even up at all in the polls. And Trump's approval rating overall actually remained unchanged. Now, that is unless, of course, you ask Rasmussen, which again, Rasmussen oversamples conservatives, oversamples Republicans, so it actually went up to 50%. And that, of course, makes sense because more Republicans like this kind of racist rhetoric than does everyone else. And so when you oversample Republicans, that number's going to go up. All right. Now, believe it or not, this is not the worst thing he said. Again, back in 2017, he talked about Charlottesville, right? And he said that there were good people on the Nazi side. That was the same white supremacist rally where they chanted, "The Jews will not replace us," and where a white supremacist took his car and, murdered a protester. Hit a whole bunch of a group of protesters and killed Heather Heyer. So that's what happened there. But there were good people on both sides. There were good people on both sides, he says. Okay, so now, by the way, the person, and I'm not saying his name for a reason, because I don't want to give him more attention, but he's now serving a life sentence of over 400 years in prison. So that happened. Now, in that instance, Trump's net approval rating dropped about 10%, or 10 points. Now, of course, it eventually went back up. So now here's the interesting thing about this, right? So now, this is from Vincent Hutchings, a political science and African American studies professor at the University of Michigan. He said that the reason that this went up is because Republicans do not see this attack as racist. He said, quote, "To Republicans, Trump is simply saying, hey, if you don't like America, you can leave. That is not at all controversial. If you already support Trump, then it's very easy to interpret his comments that way." So it really comes down to interpretation. So when you ignore all the history and the context of people saying, get out of America if you don't like it, which is, of course, usually aimed at people who are Latino descent or Latina or African American, et cetera, heck, even Native Americans, they have told, go back to your own country. Well, I would, but you kind of stole it from us. They think, oh no, that's not racist. I mean, it's amazing the mind-bendingness that comes from being a Trump supporter when he says stuff like this. Oh, what are you talking about? That's this historically racist attack has nothing to do with racism. He's just saying if you hate America, well, then you should leave. Well, nobody here hates America. The whole purpose here behind that saying is to tell people that you do not belong here. You are not an American if you were brown, black, or others, right? So, look, the irony of criticizing these women for speaking out about the actual problems in America, for example, the concentration camps at the border that right now the government is running, while having a platform of Make America Great Again, is hypocrisy at its finest. I guess what Make America Great actually means is make it great again for white people, which, newsflash, it actually is kind of good, been pretty great, I should say, for white people compared at least to what minorities go through. Now, of course, you have such high concentrations of wealth and privilege. So now among, very, very wealthy white people, and such a disdain for the poor, that now poor people are also starting to get a taste, poor white people, I should say, are starting to get a taste of what black people have experienced all along. And it's funny because now that they're upset, right? Now, there's one more thing here that Hutchings pointed out. He said that by criticizing the liberal members of the House, Trump is, quote, doing exactly what Republicans want him to do. He's taking on groups that they oppose. So here we go. This is once again basically rah, rah, go team. Oh, I don't like liberal Republican, or I don't like liberal Democrats. I don't like these progressives. Well, why? Turns out that you kind of like their policies, at least until you know that they are connected to Democratic Party. Before then, you ask people about, okay, let me get to a better example here. So in Kentucky, back during the Obamacare fight, right? So now Obamacare, you ask a Republican down in Kentucky, which at that point they were covered by something called Connect, right? So that's Kentucky's version of Obamacare, and that's the exchanges, right? So they ask people, well, do you like Connect? Yeah, well, we love it. Yeah, it's great. We're able to get more affordable health care or health insurance. But then you ask them about Obamacare. Oh, I hate Obamacare. Socialism. Despise it. That's because you connected to a party. Now, the same thing happened with Medicare for All. You had over half of all Republicans that were in favor of a government-sponsored single-payer healthcare system. And then what happened is that they, of course, since it's a Democratic proposal brought forward by Senator Bernie Sanders, and championed by people like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, the Justice Democrats, etc. So now they started lying about it on Fox News. They started talking about it. They drove that Republican support down to just 25%. Now, it still is supported by a majority of the country, but you tie party politics into it, then support for that same policy, despite it being a great policy, drops. And that's because, of course, all they're looking at is, do you have a D or an R next to your name? If you're a D, you must be evil. If you're an R, you must be great and looking out for America. That's how simple, unfortunately, a lot of Americans are. That's their simplistic thought process when it comes to politics. And so that's like a deeper conversation to try to figure out how to change that, how to, navigate that dynamic. But again, the final irony is that these four women are actually looking out for, yes, even Trump supporters. Because among these policies that they're pushing, Medicare for all, free college, a living wage, this would impact and help a lot of Trump supporters as well, the poorer ones at least. And so, look, Trump supporters, along with everyone else, are being crushed by corporations. Insurance companies are charging insane premiums, copays, deductibles. They're denying care. They're literal death panels. You have jobs out there that, are not enough for people to survive. Pensions that have disappeared. What's a pension, right? A lot of us millennials don't even know what a pension is like. We don't know. We'll never see one. Hell, most of us will never even retire. But don't worry, Fox News is out there saying, oh, well, you don't need to retire anyway. You should consider working till you drop a blessing. That is something that someone actually literally said, right? Not only that, but of course we've got climate change that's threatening a lot of people, whether or not they believe it. It is here, and it will affect them. It will impact them because it always impacts the poor first. These women want to help with this, while Trump just wants to exploit them. Their fear, their innate bias against people who are different, against people of other races, who speak maybe a different language, or who just look different. He is using that for his own ego, and of course, at the end of the day, in true Trump fashion, to make an extra buck. The same as every single scam artist that has ever lived. And unfortunately, Republican voters, as usual, will continue to not only fall for it, but enthusiastically support it. Sad. Okay. Moving on here. In just a minute. Okay. Hold. Okay. All right. Let's go to Eric Trump. Sorry, I had to find something there. Okay. Now, Eric Trump is not one of the smartest Trump children. Now, that was on full display when he claimed that 95% of Americans support Donald Trump and his message. Now, this was, of course, on Fox News. He said, my father's in there, and he's fighting every single day. And he has to fight against the media. He has to fight against these lunatics, which, referring, of course, to the squad. And, guys, I'm telling you, 95% of this country is behind him in this message. I mean, people love this nation. Look, people do love this nation. I love this nation. I love America, right? The only difference is I don't have a blind loyalty to America. I actually want to make things better for all Americans. Being a patriot means pointing out some of the issues, some of the problems, and then helping to fix it. Now, of course, some of these people, they don't see any problems. And part of that, of course, has to do with the fact that they are white and wealthy, and so therefore they're doing really well, so they don't have problems. And they look at that and they say, well, wait a minute. There are no problems in America. You must hate America and want to fundamentally change it for us. No, we want to fundamentally change it so that it helps everyone, so that everyone has that same opportunity. But now, that is kind of funny because here we have that mentality, right? People that are doing incredibly well, and yet they support and voted for a president that ran on the message of America's not great because we need to make it great again. That would imply that it wasn't great, at least for a while. And of course, in his context, in Trump's context, America was not great because I think for 8 years we had a black president. In his mind, he's like, oh, that's not great. And yes, that was the reason. Why? It's because, look, Donald Trump has done this kind of attack before. Back when Obama was president, he continued to spread the conspiracy theory, Trump did, that Obama was not born in America, the whole birther conspiracy. So, we got to see the birth certificate. He wasn't born here in America, so he's an illegitimate president. America's not great because we have Obama, a Kenyan Muslim socialist usurper, probably the Antichrist here that wasn't born in America. And so we need to make it great again by electing me, a white guy, a white billionaire, alleged billionaire, I should say. So with that established, let's kind of look into the numbers, right? And we'll see if he's right. We'll see if Eric Trump is right that 95% of Americans are in support of Donald Trump and his message or his message. So the numbers, according to an aggregate rating on Real Clear Politics, his approval numbers stand at about 44.4%. Yikes. Not only that, but his average hovers around the mid to low 40s and occasionally the high 30s. And that has been the case throughout his term. He has never topped 50%. He will never top 50%, unless, of course, you ask Rasmussen, which oversamples conservatives. So now what about Republicans? Is he at 95% with the Republicans? At one point, he actually was. But according to the latest Reuters Ipsos polls, he is not near that. He's actually at about 72% net approval. So now, maybe to give Eric the benefit of the doubt, 95% of people may approve of the way that Trump handled this fight. I mean, with AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Ayanna Pressley. So is that the case? The latest numbers show that 68% of Americans found his demands that they go back to where they came from offensive. And even among Republicans, just 50% said that they were on his side. No matter how you slice it, there's no way to make the numbers come even close. So it's shocking then that Eric Trump has been found to lie again on Fox News. Did Fox News correct him? No. It's Fox News. That said, there is some evidence that this fight did help Donald Trump among his base. That same poll found a 5% bump among Republicans. So there's a significant amount of people that thought, yeah, you tell those women to go back to where they came from. Which kind of shows you that not all Republicans are racist, but most racists happen to be Republicans. Okay. So I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We got more stories here, including Trump's tax law and Cardi B. So stay right here, around the nation. We'll take we'll answer some comments and questions, read some super chats as soon as we get right back. Stay right here, around the nation. everybody, welcome back to the show. Run the Nation right here, TYT Nation. So I've got a lot of super chats and stuff to read, comments from you guys, which I love. Okay, so let's start with the super chats. E. Joseph Apagard Peltier III says, much love for your loudmouth friend here in Minnesota. Is it Minnesota? Just to bring more light to this, we need more local party Bernie Sanders delegates to win, for the win. I just went completely stupid for a second there, not knowing my states. That's great. David Richardson says, you can't claim to love America when the flag that you put up more than any other is the Confederate flag. That is a great, great point. I love that point because you see it. They unironically put up the Confederate flag thinking, oh no, what are you talking about? We're Americans, but we're the rebels. The rebels were not America. They were not Americans. They were literally, I mean, think about it for 2 seconds. You say that they're rebels, right? That's the rebel flag. Who are they rebelling against? I mean, talk about going stupid, right? But it's more of a long-term stupidity. Jedi Mullet 77 said, it must be tough for Donald Trump when you got people like Nancy Pelosi enabling it. This whole attack against the squad was enabled, and it was planned, by the way. It was all planned, and a lot of you are right in pointing out that this does distract from the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Definitely, and there's a new video out, of course, that shows Donald Trump partying with Jeff Epstein in 1992 with a bunch of girls. So that's fun. They were both sitting there ogling women. So, oh boy. So you're right that that is, of course, a distraction. And a planned distraction at that, but it's still terrible. And a lot of this was created and started by Nancy Pelosi, who, of course, was attacking the squad as well. And Sarjek says, this got paid, breaking you off a piece, tripled it. Well, thank you. I appreciate that so very much. It helps out greatly. Now, a couple of member comments here. Zach Sherman says, right-wingers are a bunch of selfish, spiteful morons. They like the racism. They like that people deem beneath them to make less money than they do. And look, part of that is, of course, fear that they will end up in that same position. It's sort of ironic. Oh, no, I don't want people to do to me what we've done to them for decades and generations. Yeah. So we're going to continue to crush them so that they never have an advantage and never can get to that point. That's what some of them think like, man. Again, going back to the Jews will not replace us. Martin Trammell finally says, Eric looks like a moron. I mean, if you look like a moron and you talk like a moron, odds are you're a moron. So you're right about that. And then one more comment that was critical of me, because I like to talk about that. Bring It Out says, dude, you're showing your whitewashed racist history yourself. Some blacks are natives, indigenous, aborigines to America. All blacks were not brought to America on slave ships. No, look, you're not, like, no, you're right. Of course. And yes, you're right. That is a blind spot. I have my blind spots. I have my internal biases. We all do. And so, look, you point that out. I will take that, and I will note that, and I will try to do better and try to be more inclusive and try to, present things more accurately and fairly. And so this is something that, I'm going to go and I'm going to look at. I'm going to do more research. And, I will come back and I will come correct. So I appreciate that. That's part of keeping us honest and showing that, yes, sometimes I make mistakes a lot too. And sometimes we all have our bubbles, our biases, and blinders. And sometimes we don't see or recognize or even think about, like, oh yeah, you're right. There is more than just, there is black, Native Americans, and you're right, they don't get talked about enough. And so totally, I get your point and I get where you're coming from. Okay, anyway, let's move on. We've got more stuff. All right. So let's go to Trump's taxes. Or I should say not Trump's taxes, Trump's tax law and these companies that are basically screwing over vulnerable populations. All right. Boom. And I talked about a lot of the negative things involved in President Trump's tax cuts for the wealthy, and the fact that 83% of it went towards the rich, and right now we're running $1 trillion deficits. But one thing that was supposed to be positive is allowing more people to file for simplified free returns. So some of the changes made the tax, actually filing taxes easier, right? And of course, part of that, as we'll explain, is eliminating some deductions. That's not always a good thing, but increasing the standard deduction, which makes it so that some people might actually save a little bit more on taxes, at least in the short term, until those tax cuts run out. There's a sunset provision. Well, again, the corporate tax cuts go on forever while the individual cuts expire. So anyway, now some of the changes that were made ended up threatening the business interests of Intuit. Now, Intuit is a maker of TurboTax. Now, ProPublica looked into this, and they looked into how Intuit tried to make as many people pay for its product as possible, despite actually having a free option that's provided. And look, the law actually does make it easier for people to file for free. Now, the company had been regularly charging $100 or more for returns that included itemized deductions for mortgage interest and charitable donations. So now, mortgage interest, that's for somebody who obviously owns a house and pays interest on their mortgage, right? So that's for people who are a little bit more affluent or lucky enough to be able to own a home. Now, charitable donations, that also is for more affluent people, wealthier people. So those itemized deductions, of course, it would make sense that for, a company that's trying to make a profit off tax preparation, to charge more for those things because, again, those customers who use it are more affluent. Now, under the law, the new law, I should say, many wealthier taxpayers will no longer be filing that form. So that means these more affluent people would end up using the company's free software. So now that's bad for Intuit. That's bad for their tax software because now they're losing a bunch of money. Well, they had to make it up from somewhere, so where did they go? Oh, they ended up charging more low-income people for their services. Now, which ones? Well, this would include individuals with disability, unemployed, and people who owe money on their student loans, all of whom use tax forms that TurboTax previously included in their software for free. So that switch, was it effective? Was there enough money? Were there enough customers now that had to use and purchase their tax filing software to make up for the difference? Well, in May, Intuit announced that its TurboTax unit had grown quarterly revenue by 10% to $2.2 billion. That is despite losing the wealthier people who filed itemized deductions and having to go towards, of course, charging poor people more money. Now, Intuit CEO Sasan Goodarzi alluded to the strategy in a call with Wall Street analysts, saying that the tuned product lineup adjusted for the new tax legislation helped the company bring in more money. Quote, "We needed to change our lineup this year to ensure that we delivered for customers given the tax code changes. We are big supporters of tax simplification." Gee, I wonder why. "We believe that it enables consumers to take more control over their financial life." Now, of course, that's a bunch of hot air. It's a bunch of BS. Of course, they're talking to shareholders. So, we care so much about customers. We believe that our consumers, that we are doing the best we can to help them. No, what you're doing is delivering on profits for shareholders. And they did that in the worst way by shifting money, of course, or shifting their revenue or the cost from wealthier taxpayers to not so wealthy taxpayers, to poor people. Those same poor people, by the way, should not be paying a dime on their taxes. They just shouldn't. Under a 2002 deal with the government, most Americans are supposed to be able to file their taxes for free so long as they make under $66,000 a year. In return, the IRS had agreed not to offer its own free service, which actually would have been more effective. It not only would have been more effective, it would have been cheaper and easier to use since the IRS already has all your information. That's an insane deal. But since they knew the IRS could do tax prep more efficiently and for free, these companies protested. They used their money to lobby politicians to say that, no, we can't do it for free. You can't have the IRS do this. No, it has to go through us, for-profit private corporations. And I know some of you might be saying, well, I do my taxes for free because I just do it myself. Okay, that's great if you can. Wonderful. You're an extremely smart, talented person, apparently. But for a lot of people, taxes are overly complicated, or there's the fear, of course, that you're going to mess up and be audited. And look, I'll be honest, I tried doing my taxes last year as a small business or an independent contractor more. And it was difficult. And even then, when I tried to file certain forms, because I ended up having to do this, there were certain forms that I needed to file for certain deductions. I ended up having to pay H&R Block. So even though I tried to do it on my own and was mostly successful, there were some forms that I had to pay for anyway. So I ended up having to pay this. And so, look, this is a big problem. Filing taxes should be free. It should be easy, and no matter how much you make, right? Private for-profit corporations should not be involved in this thing, But, as I said before, they lobby politicians, and, they looked at the, tax laws, and they looked at this deal back in 2002 and said, wait a minute, if the IRS had us for free, we're sunk. But my profits, but my CEO, we need another yacht. You can't do this for free. You can't do this for free. And so, yeah, they use their money to buy off our politicians so they can preserve their profit margins. And look, here's the thing. There is technically a free option, yes. But, of course, as you're going to see, they make it really hard to get to, really obtuse, and they continue to hide, or not hide, but keep some of their, filing tools, these specific forms for deductions behind a paywall. Now, as ProPublica has been reporting, Intuit has steered eligible customers away from the truly free version, aggressively marketing products that are called free, even though many customers would end up paying anyway. They found that the company's commercial ecosystem included 4 price tiers: Free Edition, which is actually free, Deluxe, Premier, and Self-Employed. You can argue that or you could probably see what's the most expensive, probably self-employed, because it is actually kind of difficult to pay your taxes when you're self-employed. Coming from someone who is self-employed, take it from me. Now, the goal, according to former employees, is to draw in people with the promise of free and then to get them to pay. Some pay because they have to file extra forms. Some pay for ancillary services. Because the new law almost doubled the standard deduction, Intuit faced a loss of users of its deluxe edition. Most of the millions of Americans who no longer be itemizing their deductions are relatively affluent, making more than $75,000 a year. I freaking wish I could make more than $75,000 a year. It's a pipe dream. But they would now be potentially be eligible to use the free edition. In response, the company bumped a number of forms typically used by lower income filers, which were previously available in the free edition, into paying editions. This is one former staffer that said, quote, "They were always supposed to be customer focused, customer first, but the income levels of the groups that they were being driven to paid products was never really considered." So now how is that customer first? When you are charging poorer customers more money and the affluent customers end up filing more for free. So now, okay, what are the forms that were free and which ones are not free? Well, one of the forms was for a tax credit that goes exclusively to poor taxpayers who are elderly or get disability. So you want to do your taxes with Intuit TurboTax, they're going to charge you for filing for that tax credit for being old or disabled. Great. Another is used by low to middle income households that receive tax credit for putting money in a retirement account. So you want to put money in your retirement account, your IRA, your 401k, whatever. Ooh, you want to file? You want to get that tax credit for doing so? Sorry, you're going to have to pay money for that. A third is used by taxpayers who collected unemployment benefits. So if you're unemployed at any part of the year, which many manufacturers do layoffs in the summer. I remember that when I worked in manufacturing, or others just do layoffs because, look, a lot of these corporations that receive a lot of money in tax benefits, tax breaks, still end up closing down some of their plants. GM, for example, in Lordstown, Ohio, they closed down one of their plants. And so if you've been unemployed and you want to file that, a form that shows that you would receive unemployment benefits, nope, you end up having to pay. And then, of course, people with student loans, which are about 40 million Americans with student loans that pay interest, they also have to upgrade to their deluxe. Just last year alone, more than 5 million taxpayers with income below $50,000 claimed the student loan interest deduction. I know, I have as well. I've been doing it for a long time. Now, the company's changes also affected parents who get a credit for childcare, as well as people filling the schedule for interest and dividends. Now, the one doesn't really affect people who are low income, but for childcare? I mean, come on, man. Really? So the majority of people that are now having to pay to file their taxes in a supposedly free system now end up paying. They're making less than $66,000 a year, which, again, I fall under that, despite the government telling them that what they have to, what they can use to file their tax prep should be free. It's bait and switch. I mean, again, if you want all the deductions and the largest possible refund, then you have to file these forms. And sometimes the cost, like one documented case that's in this report, it's amazing, right? So this person, it pays student loans, for example, right? So now they wanted that student loan deduction. They ended up having to pay over $100 to get a $26 deduction. Now this person not making a lot of money, paying their student loans, hoping for that deduction that's going to be pretty good, ended up paying over $100. They lost a bunch of money. And that's just one of the documented cases in this report. But yet you don't find out how much that deduction is going to be until you've already paid to upgrade. And so that's the bait and switch. And that's what these companies are banking on, that you will pay to trick you, right? They will trick you into paying for something that might not be beneficial at all. It's 100% predatory and 100% gross. These companies, the IRS needs to have a free option. That deal is garbage. The 2002 deal, need to get rid of that and actually have a real free option. I'd say through the post office. We should also do banking through the post office. There's a lot of different ways that we could do better for our citizens and get these private predatory for-profit corporations out. Okay. Whew. Damn. All right, moving on. Let's go to some good news. Now, Senator Bernie Sanders is once again getting the support of rapper Cardi B. Now, on Twitter, she had posted a couple of days ago, I have been reading about Bernie Sanders, and I'm really sad how we let him down in 2016. This man been fighting for equal rights, human rights, for such a long time. Seeing this country become a better place been really his passion for a long time, not a new front for a campaign. So now, okay, I love that because she's pointing out that, look, this guy's authentic. He's been fighting for these same issues for a long time. And you notice a little bit of shade that she's, kind of heaping on some of these other presidential candidates, while not mentioning them, just saying that, look, it's not a new front for a new campaign. You didn't just hop on the bandwagon like, for example, Kamala Harris, not exactly Pete Buttigieg, but some of the others. who are now claiming to be more progressive, to be more in favor of Medicare for all, free college for all, living wage, etc. No, Bernie Sanders has been fighting for these for such a long time. So now, did we actually let Bernie Sanders down? No, not his supporters. Of course not, right? No, what happened is the DNC definitely did. The DCCC did. The Democratic Party did. And, of course, so did the corporate media. Those are the ones that let us all down. Now, the people who voted for Clinton over Sanders, look, and I think a lot of them, of course, were driven by fear of Donald Trump. And they listened to the media when they said, oh, no, Bernie Sanders is not electable. The only person that's electable is Hillary Clinton. I mean, look at all, she's not radical like Bernie Sanders. And you might agree with Bernie Sanders, but there's just no path for victory against Donald Trump. No, he'll call you he'll call them a socialist, and then somehow that will make sure that they lose the election. Hillary Clinton's the only way to go. Well, that proved to be completely and utterly false. Didn't quite work out. Now, you have the same message here that's being espoused by the same people, corporate media, MSNBC, and, of course, candidates like Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden, establishment Joe, right? So now, it's not true. We saw what happened when the establishment candidate took on Trump, especially one with a lot of baggage. Hillary Clinton had a ton of baggage. And actually, we thought that she might be the worst candidate to take on Donald Trump. But now we have Joe Biden, who is now arguably worse and has even more baggage, especially on racial issues. I mean, seeing him just get completely dismantled by Kamala Harris in a very planned, very well orchestrated political attack, which she then, of course, backed down on the issue of force, of government busing for African Americans in the schools. I mean, you don't think Trump's going to be able to take advantage and attack Joe Biden? Maybe not on racial issues, not looking like a complete hypocrite. But you can definitely see Donald Trump going on the attack. I mean, the corruption, etc., right? So, yikes. Danger. Now, Sanders tweeted in response to this, and this was great. He said, "Thank you, I'm Cardi B. Our fight for justice is far from over, and we're not giving up." So, I love it. It's great. Now, this isn't the first time Cardi B has thrown her support for Sanders. Back in 2016, she encouraged her fans to vote for Daddy Birdie, bitch. I love it. In April, she told Variety that, quote, "I'm always be with Bernie," when asked about 2020. And she said this: "Bernie don't say things to be cool. Like, there's pictures of him being an activist from a very, very, very long time." And what she's referring to, of course, is when he was arrested for protesting against segregated housing on college campuses. He also had chained himself to an African-American woman, saying that if you're going to arrest her, you're going to arrest me. Not only that, but of course, you had him marching with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In Selma. So a lot of important issues were backed by Bernie Sanders, even when they weren't popular. And that takes courage. And Bernie Sanders has courage. He's been on the right side of the issue on many issues for most of his life, most of his career. And look, so now she did receive a little bit of backlash from this on Twitter, and I love her answer. Now, somebody had tweeted her, "Cardi B complained about paying too much in taxes, then endorses Bernie, who will raise taxes on the rich to fund his extreme socialism." And again, you can't argue that Cardi B is not pretty wealthy. No, she's a very wealthy person, very successful, right? So now here's her response to that, and I love it. Quote, "I don't mind paying taxes if I see what I'm paying my taxes on. It's sad that we pay so much in taxes, yet we don't have free college education, neither free health care." Now, people think wrongly that progressives, we want to pay more in taxes. Are you kidding me? Of course not. No, I don't want to pay more taxes. At least under the current regime, under the current system. No, of course not. No, what we want to do is we want more of our tax money to go back to helping the community, to helping ourselves as well. And that means, of course, single-payer health care. We know that most of our tax money is going to our own health care and not the profits of a CEO sitting in a corporate office. that's making sure to deny our care to save more money for his company, for his shareholders, so they can buy a third or fourth yacht. No, that's not what we want our tax money. We want our tax money to go to us. We want our tax money to make sure that people who graduate from college don't end up getting loaded down with enormous amounts of student loan debt. We don't want that. We don't want our tax money to go to corporations. We don't want our tax money to go to corporate welfare. We don't want our tax money to go to endless wars in the Middle East. And so that's what we want. That's what we believe as progressives. It's not that we want more taxes taken out on us. It's not that we have we want more inefficient government. No, we want efficient government, and we want reasonable taxes that go to pay and help society instead of going into the pockets of CEOs and giant multinational corporations and the rich. Progressives hate crony capitalism. And you know what? Conservatives also hate crony capitalism. Now, conservatives, you're supposed to be against that, right? And a lot of you are, but unfortunately our politicians, Republican politicians, they're funded by corporations, they're funded by the ultra wealthy in order to cut taxes for themselves. But not Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders serves the people. He serves us. And he wants us to get something back for what we pay in our tax money. Guaranteed health care, higher education that doesn't leave us in debt, the ability to live our lives without worrying about how we're going to afford a surprise medical bill. I mean, that's what we want. Cardi B's wealthy, but she gets it. And hopefully you'll get it too. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do here, we're out of time. So I wanted to do the nuclear story. I don't have time for it. We'll have to do it tomorrow. So make sure to tune in around the nation right here, TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf. Follow us on Twitter at Jeff's Politics or at TYT, or I'm sorry, ATN on TYT. Also, patreon.com/TYT Nation. I know, a great idea from you guys. I'm going to clip out that first rant and throw that up online. So thank you to that idea. I appreciate that. And maybe we can get some more support from that. So thank you. All right. So that's all. Thank you guys for joining us, going around the nation with me. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll have some great stories. And you guys have a great evening. We'll see you then. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you all tomorrow.